All right, y'all, we're live, and I have a good friend of mine, y'all, Frank Holmes, the executive chairman of Hive Digital Technologies. Now, Frank, it's been a minute since you've been on the show. A lot has changed, but what is going on, my friend?
Well, we've been so busy learning everything about AI and building out. It's much more complex than I ever expected, but it's going to keep my neurons of my brain alive and young as we were building out and we're scaling up that AI business. And our Bitcoin business is continuing hitting 4 exahash. That is upgrading all of our suite of chips so that they're better high performing chips. We have a different business model. We don't like to give big dollar amounts and wait 6 months for the chips to arrive, and maybe they will arrive. We like to buy cash on delivery. So it's basically, you have 1,000 chips. Okay, can they deliver them next week? We're going to send you the money now. And then we install them, and you take out the older chips you've written off and depreciated, and you put in these more efficient chips. And that's allowed Hive to maintain 1% of the global network, whereas the difficulty has gone through the roof. I mean, when you look at when Bitcoin was $60,000, the difficulty is up 400%. And Bitcoin is basically half of its all-time high. But the difficulty, that means you're getting less of a share unless you have more efficient machines.
Mm-hmm. And, y'all, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into AI. We're going to get into Bitcoin, crypto mining. But, y'all, this is a live show. So if you want, type your comments in the chat, your questions in the chat, and Frank and I will answer live. I do ask that y'all be respectful to my guests so we can have more people on like this. Now, Frank, the first thing I do want to get to is right now, perfect timing for you to come on. Crypto's absolutely pumping. I don't know about you, but my phone is blowing up right now. People ask me what's going on. So on one hand, we have the BlackRock spot ETF that's looking like it's inevitably going to be approved. Also, too, we're about 6 months from the Bitcoin halving, and it seems that, Hive and yourself are perfectly positioned with these big catalysts coming up, because you've talked about this last episode, your HODL strategy. So what do you think? What's your current take on the crypto landscape right now?
Well, we're the only public company that I can see of that's been through the same executive, myself, and CFO as the last halving. There's so many new players that come out and got into the space and raised capital. The halvings is going to be, you're going to need Bitcoin at 60,000 basically, because the difficulty I just mentioned is up so great. And for those are not aware, what that means is that it's a fixed number of Bitcoin every 10 minutes. Basically, it's 900 Bitcoin opportunities a day, and it's a jump ball every 10 minutes. Can you get a piece of that? And Hive is about 1% of that network. Well, if we go back only 2 years ago, the number of machines competing for that have gone up fourfold. So there's less, it's just much more competitive to get a piece of the Bitcoin action. And so we have to continuously be maintaining that. As you're going through the halving, what does that mean? We're going to go from 900 Bitcoin a day opportunities to 450. Well, that's like a 50% drop in your revenue, which you've got hydro costs, where we have electrical costs, you have employees costs, etc. So you're going to have the Bitcoin price higher. And what happened last time is actually it sank for the first few months, and then it started to take off. And so I'm very cautious as we go into the halving. But what did Hive do the last halving? We did 2 deals. We quadrupled our footprint. Our Lachute property we bought just 1 month before the last halving, and it's gone from 250 petahash to over 1 exahash, that one asset we bought. And then we did another asset purchase and expanded in New Brunswick. So we're trying to say, how do we position for this halving?
Yeah, and this having, a lot of analysts are saying that the Bitcoin price could go anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000 per coin. Now, one thing, we just got a question in the chat, and it was actually going to be my next question, so I want to bring it up. So Ulysses West said, thoughts on the Bitcoin price jump, and why is Hive getting into AI? So as an investor in Hive, I noticed that you've done this pivot, and you're embracing this AI technology and utilizing AI to actually mine Bitcoin. How does that work, Frank?
Well, you know what I thought to share with you. People complain about us mining Ethereum. For listeners, Ethereum was always much more profitable than Bitcoin mining. With all respect, it was more profitable. the cost for us to do that. In the last halving, we made money throughout the halving, whereas a lot of Bitcoin miners, they lost money. They had to shut down their machines. We didn't, because we were making so much money from Ethereum. And it allowed us, the amount of money that we made from Ethereum, to actually increase our Bitcoin footprint. When we went and purchased about close to $70 million of NVIDIA chips 18 months ago, 2 years ago, starting that process, we said that we don't know how long Ethereum is going to be around, but we're going to get our money back as mining Ethereum with those NVIDIA chips. But we bought the special NVIDIA chips, whereas our peers, other mining companies, bought single purpose, only could mine Ethereum. Not our chips. Our chips allowed us to do AI. And so I saw, because years ago I took the first AI company public in Canada for gold mining, for the gold mining exploration. How do you lower your costs of mining or exploring for gold by using AI? So I was familiar with the opportunities in AI. So the NVIDIA chips we bought allowed us to pivot. So Ethereum evaporates and goes over here. All of a sudden, we can turn around and mine altcoins and immediately convert them to Bitcoin. We use AI to do that. And then we can start building out our high performance computing using AI. What we didn't expect was ChatGPT to explode the way it did. And that sort of fast tracked the process. So when I look at margins, when I just simply look at Ethereum mining versus Bitcoin mining, it's much more complex mining GPU chips. You need more technicians on hand. It's like driving a Porsche versus a 150 Ford pickup truck. That's the difference. And so when you're doing this high performance, what you can see is that we're seeing now is only 1% of our NVIDIA chips we beta test for this HPC B2B business model, and it did $250,000 in a quarter. That's a run rate of $1 million a year. And now we're running this at $250,000 a month. And by March, the model says that it could be at $250,000 a week, and this time next year, $250,000 a day. So how does that relate to a Bitcoin miner? For us to be 1% off the global network for Bitcoin mining, you need about 100 megawatts of electricity. And with that, we can get the same revenue from only 10 megawatts of electricity with our NVIDIA chips. So that is a huge, big difference in the margin business that doesn't take us away. It allows us to continue to expand our footprint in Bitcoin mining and maintain our 1% and then try to expand that to go to 2%. But right now, the difficulty's been going up so rapidly in the past 12 months that just maintaining it is something we've done exceptional. I'm so proud of from internal cash flow.
Yeah, it seems like the difficulty in crypto mining, the days of somebody like me setting up a miner in my house and mining Bitcoin are gone because of the difficulty rate, and it's just become so advanced. Now, you mentioned the DNA of volatility. I got this screen right here. I wanted to show you if you could kind of break this down for us, Frank. And we also got some questions coming in. So this chart, what is this showing? The change in gold price versus the S&P 500 versus Bitcoin, Tesla, and MicroStrategy?
Well, most people look at investments as the risk tolerance is volatility. So if they say, what is your risk tolerance? What is your volatility tolerance? And every asset class has its own DNA of volatility. And there's different factors, and that DNA actually changes over time. Tesla used to have one of the highest volatility until it became part of the S&P 500, and that changed its volatility. But what I'm trying to show investors there is that it's a non-event for gold to go up or down 1% on a daily basis. It's 70% of the time that's a non-event. But Bitcoin is substantially more, but even greater than that is Hive and MicroStrategy. So we give you bigger torque on the upside and vice versa on the downside. We will just give you much more. So if Bitcoin goes up 1%, we're here showing daily 2%, then we can go up 6%. So that's a 3 times factor. Over 10 days, Bitcoin goes up as a non-event to go up or down 8%. That means a 25% swing in Hive Digital. That's what's important. So someone that comes in and says, hey, I like this story, but I bought it and it went down. Well, we correlate with Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is up, we're up. Bitcoin is down, we're down. There's a very strong correlation, like 92, 93% of the time on a daily basis. And the same thing with all the crypto mining companies that are public. There's a quant fund out there, and I'm told it's by Citadel, that trades by the minute against Bitcoin prices. So people come in, if you're looking for torque, you think Bitcoin's going to 60,000, the odds favor you're going to get much more volatility in a crypto mining company. You're going to get much more upside because if one goes up 2%, the other one's going to go up 6%. So if you think Bitcoin is going to double, well, that means we could quadruple.
Yeah, and that was always my thought process. I own a bunch of different crypto mining stocks, Hive being one of them. And exactly what you said, if Bitcoin gets to the ranges I predicted to get to, I'll actually see a bigger return in my crypto mining stocks than with the actual physical Bitcoin, which is kind of wild to me. But Frank, we got another question just came in from Charles Bronson. Can you explain the name change that happened earlier this year? So you're speaking of, it was Hive Blockchain and now it's Hive Digital Technologies. Frank, could you kind of break that down?
Well, if you're in the conspiracy thinking, etc., it's really not much really of a conspiracy if you listen to respected lawyers like Caitlin Long, who has said that the 15 biggest banks have basically done everything to stop on-ramping and off-ramping for anyone in Bitcoin and sending money, etc. We've seen and experienced this around the world. And so what's happened was that even though we own our own data centers, we run data centers, and we've been building out on the AI, the word blockchain automatically said, oh, that's bad. We won't send your money. And it was just really like shocking to us. So we said, well, really, we're a part of the great digital transformation. And being part of that great digital transformation, it only happens if you have data centers. That's why we put our own data centers on our balance sheet. And so it better reflected that Hive Digital is part of something much bigger in addition to just Bitcoin mining. We're riding this great wave. And I'm a money manager, and one of the things to look for is the highest cash flow returns on invested capital. And I mentioned earlier, one of the things I loved about mining Ethereum, they just had better returns on invested capital. I think the worst thing they ever did was to leave proof of work to go to proof of stake, because they had 30 million kids around the world that went to bed and took their gaming GPU chips and started to try to mine. And they would try to mine. They could get 1 or 2 Ethereum a year. That bought them a new computer. That bought them new things. That's gone now. That whole big ecosystem around the world for Ethereum is evaporated. Those kids that were mining, they had a wallet. They turned around and had to go in exchange. They would go sell it, convert it to cash to buy a new computer. They shrunk that ecosystem that is predominantly just banks, and the biggest player in that place is JP Morgan in the staking game. So that's not been what we're not into that space. So we want to say that we're part of the great digital transformation.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Ethereum switching to proof of stake from proof of work. I think proof of work's more secure, and proof of stake obviously is going to be more centralized. And yeah, it hurt a lot of people that were mining Ethereum. I think most people didn't like it. Now, Frank, the next topic I want to bring up, you did speak at the Bitcoin conference a little while ago. And you brought up, how important Bitcoin is to private property rights. I thought that was a good correlation you made because, essentially, if they can take your Bitcoin, that sets the precedent that they can take all your property. Bitcoin is private property, and without private property rights, we don't have a country. So could you kind of break that down?
Sure. Well, I was trying to go back through the history and the significance of common law versus civil law. And most religious laws are based on a civil law system. Common law came because the barons and the dukes got all upset with King John I and said, we're sick and tired of fighting your silly wars and you taking our workers from the farmland and all of a sudden beating them up and enslaving them, the serfdom world. And they created in the year 1215 the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta was the creation of common law. And the functionality of common law was creation of private property rights. And what you saw as private property rights grew, human rights grew with it. It was actually to protect not just my land, but also my people and then all of us. So I think that's the idea of patents, intangible patents on my idea. That first, I think in 1350 was the first Flemish went to England to get a patent on his idea for glass blowing. The most famous is the architect who built the dome in Florence, but that was 200 years later. So I really think that we have to recognize that common law is very important. No common law country's gone bankrupt. Many countries that have gone are civil law. It's interesting that we seem to get a lot of strife still in the world. Ukraine and Russia, these are two civil law countries. All this stuff, the same thing, and sadly enough, that's happening in Israel and the Gaza Strip and all that. These are civil law. Common law is interesting how it is really consumed with protecting of human rights. And then I told people that when you go in a civil law country, which has basically gone to emulate and copy common law, it wasn't until like 1904 that in Amsterdam that the Dutch came out with a patent law, a law that's basically copying common law. And so now we come to only this century, Venezuela, Chavez comes to power, and he immediately turns around and starts confiscating all the private property rights, and everything becomes state rights. And what happens is human rights are gone. And now we are processing through San Antonio 300 Venezuelan refugees a day coming in. So this idea of people think that you can have human rights, but you can have the state own all the property rights is massively flawed. And gold has always been that portable, intangible, portable but tangible, portable wealth. And it was my property. This is my gold ring. This is mine. I carry with me, and I can convert it to money if I need it. All those people that got out of Vietnam had grams of gold. The first people out of Syria were those that had gold to be able to escape. So now we have something new, and it's called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is part of that great digital transformation. And it is about private property rights. And I can put it in my electronic wallet, and I can turn around and carry it with me. I can carry it with me wherever I want to go to protect my family's economics. And it's hard for a lot of people to grasp the significance of common law. Private property rights and human rights are all connected. If you take away private property rights, it's just a matter of time before human rights are taken away. And it's best in a great America. And I love seeing, I was reading today that the biggest farmland owner in America is Bill Gates. Well, why is he the biggest? Why is he the biggest in Brazil? Why isn't he the biggest in Argentina? Why? Because they don't have property rights like they have in America. A lot of big wealth goes into buy because they have the feeling, the tangible private property rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's spot on, Frank. You know, private property rights or basic human rights. Luckily, I live in Louisiana. We are based on common law. And if you guys don't know this, there's a reason why dictators hate Bitcoin, because they hate private property. Dictatorships hate private property. But Frank, that was spot on. We got another question just came in.
But I wanted to add to that. You know, one of the things is that in Amsterdam, what I see is that I used to get this from the gold world, the gold bugs. Those who complain the most about the government were gold bugs that actually own none or little gold. They just didn't like the government, and that's flawed, because you need government. Which what really happens, and where gold is an important asset class, is, and based on all our studies, is that there will always be imbalances between monetary and fiscal policy. It doesn't matter if in America, Democrats or Republicans, there will always be these imbalances. And the greater the imbalance, the greater the importance of decentralized assets like Bitcoin and gold. These are alternative asset classes. They are decentralized, and they're an important part. So these imbalances we can see in Europe, we can see by different countries. So how do I explain this? It's a binary model. Government policies are monetary or fiscal. Monetary is interest rates and money supply. Fiscal is tax and spend and regulations. So if there's an imbalance here, that will show up in a weaker currency. A weaker currency makes Bitcoin go up in value. A weaker currency makes gold go up in value in that country's currency. So it's all about the imbalances between government policies, and sometimes there's just a lag between the implementation of an idea. But what we've seen this century is not only has gold far outperformed the S&P 2-1, and Bitcoin's outperformed every asset class, has been this idea of MMT, modern monetary theory, the idea of just printing money to get through every challenge and difficulty. And the greater that MMT has been practiced, the greater the imbalance, the greater the value and importance for old asset class models of using gold. The largest hedge fund manager in the world is Bridgewater. It's Ray Dalio, and Ray Dalio owns gold, and he'll go from 10 to 25% in his parity trading. So he understands gold as an asset class, and he says Bitcoin is like a Mozart symphony. It's so beautifully designed, and it's one of those alternative asset classes. So I think that Larry Fink said a couple of weeks ago that when people become fearful globally, they run to US treasuries, then they run to gold, and now they run to Bitcoin. So they go to three of them all combined, which fit into alternative asset classes.
Yeah, spot on. Gold has always been a safe haven asset. And this idea of our money being disconnected from the state, this hasn't ever happened in history before. So, obviously the state's not going to want to give up power. The central banks aren't going to want to give up power, but I don't think they have a choice now because, there's really no stopping Bitcoin, especially at this point. But Frank, we do have another question just came in. The Giganator saw your speech in Amsterdam and loved every minute of it. What are you most excited about with Hive's future?
Well, we have a strong balance sheet. We depreciate faster than our peers, our chips. We're just more conservative when it comes to depreciation and more like following Amazon's model. But when you take away all this depreciation from all our peers, I think we're still the most profitable company. We have the highest revenue per employee as another metric to look at. Our models will be more like the gold royalty companies, which if you look at Franco-Nevada listed on New York Stock Exchange, it's $34 million of revenue per employee. Apple is $2 million. Hive fluctuates with Bitcoin pricing, but it got down to a low of $6 million and it's been up to more like $15 million per employee. So that's sort of our model. If you want to know the future, is that we're going to be very much have strong intellectual capital. We do not want to get into the gold, like in a gold mining company. We do not want to get into all of that. We want to be able to manage from an intellectual capital of how we deploy our capital, and revenue per employee is an important factor. And I think what we're doing in AI is just like we did Ethereum. It complements Bitcoin mining. It's a high margin business. It's a high growth sector. And both of them, Bitcoin mining and AI, need data centers. And we have the most expertise because of what we learned from mining Ethereum to basically pivot into AI.
Yeah, I think AI is going to present a huge opportunity for investors. Me personally, I'm terrified of the AI, but I think we're kind of on two paths, Frank. That one, there's a pro-human future AI, and there's another path that's more of a dystopian, think Terminator or the Matrix type of a journey for AI. And I think it's up to people like us that's going to, be the pro-human future.
Well, I read a funny stuff. I was with the lawyer the other day, a contract lawyer, and he was saying that his client used GPT Chat and uploaded the agreements, the offering memorandum from GPT Chat, and then said, "Now don't charge me $30,000, $40,000. Just charge me. You're charging me $500 an hour to edit it, so you don't have to boilerplate because that's all they do." So GPT Chat will change this. So and also when it comes to looking for medicine, if you're looking for help for a cure or stuff, it will be able to sort through a lot of the noise, because if you go to Google today, you're going to get so many sponsored ads, you're going to get so much other information. But I think we have to be really conscientious that there's a political bias that's embedded in GPT Chat, because it does come out of Silicon Valley and there is a political bias. So if you can see that, then I think it's a wonderful tool. And I have all my employees in my investment company, because they're a money management business. They are spending several hours a week learning how to apply AI from every part of our life.
Yeah, it's wild. I seen an article where it was like, it's soon going to be medical malpractice if a doctor doesn't consult some form of AI or chat GPT before they tell you something. So that's, it's going to put, so many people out of business now. Frank, another thing, I just saw this headline too. ExxonMobil powering Bitcoin mining pilot using excess natural gas. Now, where I live in Louisiana, we have two refineries right here, and they're constantly flaring off gases, just, wasted pollution. How is crypto mining and Bitcoin mining especially going to actually benefit the environment? Because we know the narrative is crypto bad, Bitcoin bad, bad for the environment. We've heard it, but that's not exactly true, right?
No, not at all. You have that visual showing earlier. We were the first to go in to balance the grid. We've been going on our 4th year. We've been doing it in Sweden, and we're the first to hedge our cost of electricity. And what we did, because of software, we can go from 30 megawatts to 3 megawatts in seconds, and then tool right back up. So when you're in mining Bitcoin, you can help balance the grid. So there's a lot of times 30% of electricity is actually wasted. They can't capture it in batteries, and nuclear energy in particular. It's a huge capex to build a reactor and put all the infrastructure in. And most of the time, the energy is just evaporating. Here, you can put Bitcoin machines beside it, and you can turn around and you can get a faster return on capital. When it comes to the natural gas you just mentioned, there is no doubt you can recycle that energy, because something that Hive has been doing is in Montreal, where we only use green energy, and we're using hydroelectricity there, but we're creating a carbon credit, you could say, technically, because we take the energy from our 30 megawatt facility, we mine Bitcoin, and then we heat coils and we send it across like a radiator, and we heat a building 5 times bigger with 175 workers manufacturing whirlpools. And so the idea of recycling, and our plans are to build out in 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle in Sweden, a huge greenhouse that would take from our machines there and then recycle the heat. So therefore, there'd be no need to move cabbages or cucumbers and red peppers and tomatoes from Italy or Spain. They would be right in that local area. So you can recycle, and it just requires some smart people think about how can you re-innovate. We're looking at a hockey arena of how 1 megawatt can turn around and heat that facility. We do know in Amsterdam, where we've seen 2 megawatt facility heat 6 football fields of greenhouses, 6 football fields, and predominantly high quality product of red peppers. And they have robots to go around and pick up the peppers. Human beings sort them because it's a human touch that knows is good or bad, like avocados. And I think there's many applications so that people should just think of reapplying rather than being negative, look at the positive. But I think something we all fight this invasion, which I'm really concerned about, is other NGOs outside of America that are coming and influencing our policymakers here, like the World Economic Forum, brag about having half of Canada's cabinet from Justin Trudeau, that his cabinet are basically following that. And a lot of FUD comes from this. There's another company that approves a lot of proxies. And I just found out that they're predominantly Irish research analysts in Ireland are dictating proxy policies in Canada and the US for voting on our capitalism. So we're not realizing that we're importing people that are making important decisions, and that takes away from our own ingenuity. And so we also get this sort of FUD that comes out of the World Economic Forum. And I think that we just have to sit down. America's all about innovation. It's about competition, innovate your way through it. And there's lots of opportunities of Bitcoin mining where these facilities can be reconverted and transfer of heat.
We must penetrate the cabinets is actually what Klaus Schwab, the chairman of the WEF, actually said. And I agree, Frank, these NGOs that, we didn't elect these people. Why are these people influencing our politicians? Why are these, why are our government leaders? Why are our business leaders? Why are they attending these events that we have no say so? What happened to we the people? But Frank, I got another question just came in from a friend.
And I wrote a piece that was very positive, like well received on migration. And you go back to the UN. Well, the UN we fund, but the UN has predominantly other poorer nations. And in the year 2000, they came up with a policy that basically if a country is not having enough babies fast enough, it's okay to populate them. So move people from Africa into Italy, into Spain. It was a thought process. And this year it's now suggesting that climate change is the reason we're a rich country and we're causing all the poverty in other nations. So therefore, we should let these people come into our country. There's sort of misinformation and disinformation over this whole thing of the migration. And this really comes back to our sovereign private rules on our private laws and private capital. So I do think it's not one set off against the other. And Bitcoin comes right in the middle of that as a sort of intangible asset. And my favorite story for your listeners about intangible assets are diamonds. So this thing called love in 1947, De Beers rolls out with that you have to get married for love to validate your engagement, which is intangible, is validated with this rock called a diamond. And we went from 3% to 80% adoption. So 80% of people expect to give a diamond or receive a diamond if you're going to make a commitment for eternal love. And then De Beers went and did it again in 65 in Japan. From 3% to 80% of Japanese women expect a diamond. So what happens when you get this adoption with Bitcoin? What happens when this thing is intangible? Love is intangible. And what happens when all of a sudden you say, I can move this portable intangible, goes through this big adoption because it's capped at 21 million coins. Well, therefore, you can get this Metcalfe's law applying to it. So I like this, look at history, like I talked earlier about in the year 1215 when the Magna Carta was created, it created common law. You got to go back in history and you can see the things just that are happening today actually repeating themselves in a different way. So I remain very bullish longer term on the Bitcoin. But between now and the halving, it could be really whipsawing. That's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so if you're not familiar with the UN's policy, you can go to C40.org. And, where I live, New Orleans is a listed partner, is a C40 city. And they're doing this forced migration of essentially saying that, yeah, because of climate change, we're sending all these refugees to these different cities. Now, this was all okay when it was just Texas taking all of the migrants. Well, now we're seeing the mayor of New York saying that this problem is going to destroy New York City. They're blaming it on climate change, but that's actually not what it is. It was actually the pandemic policies and the lockdowns that destroyed third world countries, destroyed their economies. But that's what they're not going to tell you. But
and this is the imbalance I talk about between fiscal and monetary policies. So regulations show them their fiscal policies, any type of these things. So there's imbalances, and they'll correct them. That's something about our dynamic country and dynamic process. But these imbalances mean that you should have some other assets to protect your overall wealth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because think about it, like you mentioned Syria, you mentioned the migrants, you think they'll be able to get across any border with gold? Borders, the idea of borders are where good ideas start and bad ideas start, so that's the importance of borders. With Bitcoin, you can take it across borders, so that's the one benefit Bitcoin has over gold. Gold just has, it's been around forever. It's been a store of value forever. But Frank, I got another question that came in from my friend Todd. He said, is it feasible for a person to start a mining rig for a passive income with no experience in digital currency at this point? What do you think of that, Frank?
No, I think it's very, very capital intensive. It's not a place for the passive income. I really think there's many other sources of passive income, especially in the energy space. You can get royalty companies that pay out very attractive yields, and they will torque with the price of oil and gas, or pipelines that are moving natural gas. So I think if you're into the digital world, then you can look at digital realty. That's a company that's a REIT, but it's basically data centers. Mm-hmm. And the growth of AI and the growth of data centers around the world, well, the more they acquire and build, then they just pay out 90% of that income. So I think there's other places to participate in the great digital transformation for a passive income.
Yeah, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, Frank. I think it's worth exploring if electricity is cheap where you're at, or you're able to some type of way harness green energy. Because some of these altcoins, you're right. Sometimes it's better just to buy the coin than to buy all the mining equipment, because you can make more return that way. But I think if you were able to pick the right coin and get the right mining equipment, there is still some opportunity. But you're right, it's pretty much all gone away. But Frank, my boy Chase just came up with another question. He asked, curious on your thoughts on ESG. If y'all don't know what that is, that's environmental social governance. That's, essentially how they grade publicly traded companies. And DEI, I can't for the life of me think of what DEI is, but what do you think of that, Frank?
I think that they're beautiful concepts. I know in the gold mining, it's been a practicing ESG for a long time. If you look in communities in Mexico or Canadian companies, and U.S. investors go into Canadian silver mining companies in Mexico, what they do in that local community is unbelievable. And they fly back to Vancouver or to Toronto, but they go back to this other life. They do everything to improve that lifestyle. I've always invested and given money into charities in Latin America and Africa, wherever we have investments, etc. So that idea of the ESG is just good practices, but trying to force it and use it as a political agenda, I think that there's not enough supporting data. And I think that the World Economic Forum tries to find, or other NGOs, those acronyms to all of a sudden try to regulate those investment decisions. It's very different than pollution. Pollution is pollution, like you just mentioned about the refineries, et cetera, that you have to focus on what do we do to clean up the pollution. And ESG became too much of a political football, and it really got pushed by Norwegians that have $1 trillion sovereign fund with less people than the city of Houston. And we look at the amount of money per capita, and they start basically projecting the rest of the world should be this way. They tell BlackRock you can't get any more money from us unless you basically use ESG. They try to force that agenda. What's interesting is that it's sort of a pushback against the ESG, and it's not really a key factor now by the big pools of capital. But I do think, Hive has been really conscientious in being green only, giving back to the communities that we're in, educating people in the community. We sponsor in Bowdoin, it's like in Texas football, but in Bowdoin it's hockey. And there's 3 players there who made the NHL, and 2 of them won 2 Stanley Cups. So everything in that little community is hockey. So we sponsor 12 kids teams and the arena, so that therefore they can have money for other things in their community. I think that that's just good business. In San Antonio and other places, that you give back money to your community.
Yeah, I remember being in college. I had a high-level business class, and I remember them asking, is it, should businesses and business owners give back? Should they give to charity? And the professor was like, no. Like he adamantly said, and going back to ESG, if you think about it, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried and Company, their leadership score in the ESG was higher than like Microsoft or like Amazon or Tesla or something. So, my concern is that these ESG scores that we see on companies that are, like you said, are indicating whether they can get funding or not, is going to kill good companies. And that eventually that those type of ESG scores will be put on us as the public as some type of social credit score. So that's what I'm worried about, Frank. Now, Frank, I want to ask you, I haven't gotten to ask one question I wanted to ask. I'm just curious. What is your morning routine? Because, I've experimented with a bunch of different morning routines, just trying to, have an optimal day. So somebody in your position, I'm like, man, what do you do? Like, you wake up, is it the same routine, or is it any secrets?
It's a similar routine. I get up and get ready, get my little 8-year-old girl, give her a kiss and a hug as she gets ready to get dressed for school. And I put on my running equipment and I go and run 5K, 3 miles. In the weekends, I put in 6 miles and 7-mile runs. I'm 68 and I'm still running great. And so that's the routine that I have. And the only thing I really check on my phone in the morning is I like to see what the weather's going to be. And then I like to get my run to clear my mind. And then I can go back and take a look at if there's any other calls I have to make, etc. And usually about 7 o'clock, I get calls out of Europe. Is a process for other investments and people over there, because 7 o'clock is going to be like between 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. and get a feel, because I have investments over there, and Hive is also has facilities in Iceland and Sweden. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's I've been running a lot myself lately. But yeah, definitely, I definitely feel better, when I run during the day, and it definitely sets the day off right. Now, y'all, we're running out of time. So if y'all have any other questions for Frank, Frank, I just want to kind of give you the floor, man. Is there anything you want to bring up to my audience? And I'm gonna share some of the slides y'all provided me, but
Yeah, okay. Well, the biggest thing I share with your listeners is that we live in the greatest nation in the world, and we're so critical of the greatest nation in the world. We're the biggest in charitable giving. America is remarkable, and it will always be a competitive punch out to get to the final good decision. But it is an incredibly innovative, competitive nation. And I think that we have to be grateful that we're not trying to run out of our country to go to Venezuela. They're all trying to get into our great country, and it's all about bad government policy in these other nations. And we have a great country, and we have to be thankful, because one of the big parts, MIT has done this research, that when people are grateful and thankful, they actually make better investment decisions.
mm-hmm.
What if you wake up being pessimistic and critical every day? It's not good for your own health, your own karma, and it's not good for actually making good investment decisions. You make negative emotional decisions. So the biggest thing is wake up, and I do that every morning when I'm running. I thank God for blessing me with the ability to run under these trees and enjoy that we're in the greatest country in the world. We invented, I believe, Bitcoin. I believe that invention comes from America. It may have a name, Satoshi, a Japanese name, but I think it's just a great American ingenuity.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly an expert in theology, but I think it does say in the Bible that that having gratitude and expressing gratitude is something like a daily affirmation you should do. But y'all, we're running out of time, so any of your questions, drop in the chat. Frank, can you kind of tell everybody where they can look you up at? Look up Hive.
Yeah, go to Hive Digital. We publish a lot of research on our YouTube channel. We do it in many languages in countries that we are in. We're in Swedish and Spanish, we're English, we're French. And I think we have lots of content. And myself, I have a Frank Talk blog at usfunds.com. And I reach to about 100,000 readers in 80 countries every week. My investment team, we put together sort of a SWOT analysis of investment themes around the world. So go to usfunds.com and you can get a better feel. Remember, the idea of co-founding the creation of Hive is because I realized in 2017 the ETF was not going to happen. Now it's going to happen. So what I really did was I put up money to start the first crypto mining company, and the rest all followed behind us. So I just think follow US Funds and wish you all happy investing.
Well, y'all, we got one more minute. So if any other questions come in the chat, Frank, one more thing I did want to ask you. You talked about, I believe at the Bitcoin conference, about the Bitcoin ordinals. For those who don't know, those are essentially like Bitcoin NFTs, something I haven't dived too much into. Is that still a plan that Hive's going to drop some Bitcoin ordinals?
When I was spoken a couple of years ago at Bitcoin in Miami, I said that a green Bitcoin is going to become more valuable, like an Andy Warhol print. And some people booed the Maximus. Well, already I've been offered a premium for them. What's happened with the ordinals was the fact that you can take one Satoshi, one Bitcoin equals 100 million Satoshis. And I can take one of those and tie a picture of you with your daughter holding hands. So I can digitize that if she was born in the past 10, 12 years, I can take that Satoshi and connect it to that photo. That is very valuable. So people went out and screened through all of our Bitcoins, and they said, we have special numbers that 250 of our Satoshis are worth $250,000. So what I see in the future is that someone's going to want a picture of something that's important to them when they got married or they got engaged, and they're going to digitize that photo with a Satoshi. And that is an ordinal. And that is going to become a classic of what you've seen in decentralized art world.
Wow. Yeah. I'm definitely going to do a deep dive on the ordinals. But y'all, we are out of time. Thank y'all for everybody for the awesome questions in the chat. Frank, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a really awesome live stream. But man, anything else you want to leave us with, Frank?
Just stay positive.
Stay positive, positive affirmations, have gratitude. All right, y'all, we are out. Make sure to give Frank and Hive a follow. We are out, y'all. Peace.